take it from there. Okay, so Alan, I think you did actually just start it, which is fine. Just so you know, we're live.
That's great.
Okay, very good.
I like being live.
And alive.
Oh, yeah, sorry. If people could type, introduce yourself, if either with your name or just where you are. If you don't want to give your name in the chat, that'll be a nice way for us to see who's on the webinar. Looks like there's 18 people. So we're going to give it another minute or so before we start. Okay, we're seeing people. So I will give some logistics. First, I'm Alan Berkowitz. I am the head of education here at Cary, and it's my real pleasure to be hosting today's seminar guest. Just to remind folks that we have that you have both the chat and the Q&A. The chat we're using now for people to say their name and where they're from. If you, or just where you're from, if you don't want to give your name, that's fine. And then we'd like you to use the Q&A to enter questions. I think we're going to do most of the questions at the end of the seminar, but please, as soon as you have a question, enter it there, and one of us will be hovering and keeping an eye on those, and hopefully we'll have a chance to address as many questions as we can at the end of today's session. There's also, just to give a plug, Regina is available from 1 to 1:30 and 1:30 to 2. There's 2 kind of half-hour slots. And if anyone wants to join, each of those has already a few people signed up, but if anyone wants to join one of those, please just fire me or Matt Gillespie an email and ask to be part of one of those. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce Regina. Regina is a new colleague that I'm just getting to know, and she and I are part of a large National Science Foundation supported network of clusters. So there are 9 clusters all working on the critical zone, which is just about everything on Earth, from the bottom of the groundwater to the top of the tree canopy into the atmosphere. So it's soils and rocks and water and organisms, the biosphere, and a big chunk of the geosphere and atmosphere. And each of these clusters has a different theme. She's working on a big data cluster, and I'm working on an urban cluster. And we're both in the education parts of our cluster, and that's kind of how I've gotten to know her. So I was really happy that she was available to come and talk with us. Regina has a PhD in curriculum and instruction from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a Master's of Arts in Science Education from City University, Lehman College. And her undergrad was in physical anthropology at SUNY Oneonta. She's had a number of positions in academia and is currently, and for quite a while now, been at the University of Vermont in the College of Education and Social Services. So I'm going to welcome Regina, and I don't have your seminar title, but I'm sure you have it at the beginning of your talk. So I'm delighted to welcome you on board, Regina Toolin.
Thank you, Alan, for that kind introduction. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the critical zone cluster and what we're doing in terms of education and outreach as part of my presentation today. I'm going to start sharing my screen and my presentation. How does that look? Good? All right, and you can hear me all right? Perfect. So the title of my presentation is Place-Based Education, Multiple Perspectives, Principles and Practices in the Design of Pre-Service and In-Service Teacher Professional Learning Programs. As Alan has already stated, I am at the University of Vermont. I'm in the Department of Education, secondary education in particular, and College of Social Services, Education and Social Services. There are a few things I want to do today. I'm going to give you a little bit more background. Alan provided a really nice introduction of some of the things I've been doing in my education. And I want to go into that a little bit more because I think it really informs sort of the place that I am at right now in my career and trajectory related to project and place-based education. I'm going to talk about personal connection to place and place-based education, look at a couple of definitions and traditions related to place, particularly liberal, critical, and indigenous perspectives, and how these perspectives inform a relatively new program at the University of Vermont in place-based education. It's the place-based undergraduate certificate that is only a year old, and it's pretty exciting for us as faculty and students. And then I will wrap that into sort of some of the program and coursework and prominent themes and experiences that we all experienced as part of the foundation course last fall. So some exciting things in my career and I think overall at UVM related to place and place-based education. A couple of things about me. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from the Bronx and Yonkers, grew up in the Bronx and Yonkers. And more recently, before I moved to Vermont, lived in Yorktown and Dobbs Ferry. So those of you who are in New York, which I think most of you are probably familiar with all those places, I attended and taught at Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx. And as Alan already explained, my BA is from SUNY Oneonta, a master's from Lehman, and my PhD in Science Ed from University of Wisconsin-Madison. I worked at the Board of Cooperative Education Services in Yorktown. I've also worked as a science consultant for the New York City Board of Education. Now I believe it's called the New York City, what is it called? Department of Education. I've also was a faculty member at Pace, St. John's, and Fordham Universities in New York. And I've been at Vermont, University of Vermont since 2006. Since the latter part of the 90s, and this was the time that I was mostly in New York working at those various universities, my scholarship was focused on teachers' conceptualization and implementation of the principles and practices of project-based learning. And I'm going to talk about that and some definitions in a little bit. But I was really interested in questions related to PB, project-based learning, in culturally and linguistically diverse environments. In that time, it was in New York City. And when I moved to Vermont, it became sort of more of a rural perspective. I've published over 26 papers and secured about $9 million as PI, co-PI in 9 federally funded projects related to this work. And a few of these professional learning programs that have developed as a result of this work in project-based learning and place-based learning, all of which, well, no, 2 of them are current. The Champlain Research Experience for Secondary Teachers, or CREST program, the Vermont STEM Leadership Institute, and another current one, which the acronym is INSPIRES. The very long name for this research project is called Intelligent Informatics and Smart Data for Improved Understanding of Northern Forest Ecosystems. And I will talk about that and the CREST program in some more detail as I move along in this presentation. But overall, and to keep it simple, what is this all about? What is this work is really about trying to engage teachers in authentic scientific research. So when we think about the CREST program, which is very much about the Lake Champlain Basin, we engage teachers in such research related to cyanobacteria blooms or lake habitat fragmentation on lake trout. And for the INSPIRES project, which is very much focused on research and big data related to the northern forests, we're really concerned in Vermont with the impending emerald ash borer infestation. Only recently, I was out in the field with scientists and a group of teachers, in the Corinth Forest, which is in central Vermont, and it's only a matter of maybe even weeks or months before they're expecting the emerald ash borer to begin infesting this area, this forest in central Vermont. So sad, but also exciting at the same time to be on the cutting edge of research and out in forests for this one in particular, and seeing all the sensors that are set up and also sort of all the experiments that are ongoing. So our point is, how do we get teachers involved in authentic scientific research alongside scientists and science educators so that they in turn can apply this research to their evolving project and place-based teaching practice? And that's a theme that you'll see throughout much of what I'll talk about in terms of other research projects that I'm involved with. But I'm guessing many people are probably familiar with project-based learning, but I thought it would be important to put a definition up here so we're all in the same place and thinking about what project-based learning really is. So the goal is to investigate real-world standards-based problems that are interest, relevance, value, and worth to students and teachers over a sustained period of time. Projects are defined by questions or problems that are collaboratively designed and investigated by students and teachers, utilizing the latest technology and resulting in a series of authentic artifacts or products that address questions and problems over time. And again, if I go back to my simple definition from before in terms of what focuses my work, how do we get students and teachers involved in real science, in real authentic science and science investigations? And project-based learning helps us to think about sort of a process, a way, a plan, if you will, to begin to make this happen in classrooms. Place-based education, which is very much the focus of most of my presentation forthcoming, is really focused in a number of different ideas and traditions. So you have people like Sobel, who thinks about more of a liberal tradition where the process of using the local community environment as a starting point to teach across the curriculum, all the different subjects, is how place-based education is rooted in Sobel's mind. Others think more about the socially constructed nature and inherent conflict of places wrapped up in issues of colonization, race, class, gender, as well as ideological and the material legacy of collective inhabitation and placemaking. And then indigenous perspectives offer differing perspectives on place and education due to the nature of their operative knowledge systems, which carry pre-existing ethics of social and ecological sustainability. And again, this will be the thrust of the latter part of my presentation and talking about place and place-based education. Back to some of my scholarship related to projects and project-based learning. I've examined a variety of different factors that influence the implementation of project-based inquiry with high school and middle school teachers in urban schools. Those are some of my earlier publications, and all of that's related to most of my work in New York City. Other studies related to sustainable energy and climate change projects that teachers developed and implemented with students in rural schools. Another study looked at social justice projects in the science classroom. And recently, I had an article accepted with my co-authors, Simon Jorgensen and Stephanie Ratmeyer, that reports on work that we did from 2015 to about 2018 related to the Vermont STEM Leadership Institute. And here we had teachers involved in a 2-year program at UVM Summer Institute, but that also was part of the academic year, and we saw teachers on a monthly basis. But this paper reports on changes in teachers' content and pedagogical content over the course of their participation, and how this demonstrated some moderate to strong indications about teachers were thinking about and implementing place-based, project-based, and the importance of engaging students in authentic scientific research. So you're probably seeing a theme in terms of my work and the things that I've been interested through the years and that I continue to sort of focus on here at UVM. A current project that I'm working on that I've had sort of probably the luxury at this point. It's been funded for 10 years. And this is what the CREST program is about. It's a Gear Up project funded by the federal Gear Up grant. Gaining early awareness and readiness of undergraduate programs is what Gear Up stands for. And the Champlain Research Experience for Secondary Teachers, fondly called CREST in our neck of the woods, has been ongoing, and this will be our 10th year. Our whole goal is to immerse teachers in research about the Lake Champlain Basin. We partner with a variety of different sort of organizations, nonprofits in particular in the Burlington area. Shelburne Farms is one organization. The Lake Champlain Maritime Museum is another. And through the years, we have partnered with the Eco Science Center and a number of other grants, the Sea Grant at UVM. And there are probably more than I'm not thinking about that we've focused on in 10 years. So we have some amazing labs right on Lake Champlain called UVM's Ecosystem Science Labs. Up until this past fall, we had a research vessel called the Melisira. We are in the process of having a brand new research vessel delivered to the University of Vermont. It might actually be making its way to Vermont at this point in time from the Long Island Sound. I haven't heard the latest. But it's been my great privilege to work with the scientists aboard this research vessel with groups of 20 teachers every year. We won't have this boat this year for the project, but we're hoping by the latter part of the summer, we can bring teachers on the new research vessel, of which the name is being kept a secret at this point in time. So this project also is collaborating with the project that Alan and I are working on related to critical zone clusters. So the PI, Julia Perdrile and I got together and thought that there's so much related in the goals of CREST and the goals of the CZ Teacher Academy. Why not bring teachers together from Vermont and Mississippi? And so right now we're slated to bring 14 teachers from middle schools and high schools in Vermont to engage in this CREST project to study critical zone in the context of the Lake Champlain Basin. Another project that I'm currently working on that again is the whole thrust of how do we bring this real current project, NSF project work to the fore with teachers is the critical zone research network cluster using big data approaches to assess ecological resistance across scales. Julia, a dear friend and colleague, is the PI, and myself, along with Lee, Rizzo, and Underwood, are co-PIs on this grant. Where it's hard to say what year we're in with COVID. I think we're in year 2, going into year 3, but it's hard to say because things are just so in flux in terms of the work that you're able to do with these kinds of projects. But my role is to collaborate with project scientists across the spectrum and across the country related to our grant and other cluster grants to really think about how to integrate the research related to ecological resistance and resilience into teacher professional learning programs. And one of the focuses that we've been very much involved with is, as a team, as the UVM and other teams that are part of our cluster across the country, is to really think about team science and team science practices and to develop strategies and tools that will center and integrate diversity, equity, and community into research team and education and outreach processes. We currently have a paper under review related to this work that we've been doing for about a year on this grant. Back to the teacher professional learning piece, we have 6 middle school teachers from Jackson, Mississippi, who are currently involved in the Critical Zone Academy. That was launched last fall in 2021. It was all online. And this year we're bringing, I think half of those teachers are coming to Vermont to be part of the CREST CZ Academy, and which is currently in development. It is a 10-year program, but bringing these 2 programs together naturally is making us revisit what our goals are and what we want to be for our outcomes for this program. And thinking creatively without a research vessel on how we're going to get teachers out on the lake. And I think we've solved that in a couple of different ways. And a third current federal project that I'm currently involved with that I already mentioned is this EBSCOR Inspires grant. And that is a tri-state University of Maine, University of New Hampshire, University of Vermont collaboration with these amazing PIs from each of these institutes that I've listed there. And here we're very much focused on thinking about the types of knowledge and support that secondary teachers need to involve students in scientific and data intensive explorations within the context of forest ecosystems and community investigations. We fondly call this kind of thinking QRC, quantitative reasoning and context. That's a focus of our work as part of the Inspires grant. 13 middle school, high school teachers are currently participating in this. We had our year one summer institute at the Schoodic Institute in Acadia National Park last year. If you haven't been there, it's an incredible place for research and education. And we got to spend an entire week there learning about forest ecology, forest ecosystems, and actually were involved in installing an actual sensor suite there right on the property, all done by the teachers who participated in this last year, and some amazing scientists from the University of New Hampshire. We're currently planning 2022 Summer Institute. We will be at Orono for this. I and myself, 8 teachers from Vermont will go to Orono, still recruiting teachers from New Hampshire, and I'm really looking forward to sort of continual learning about the research project and studying the Northern Forest from the perspective of University Orono campus and their research site there right on campus. I'm going to segue now. I just wanted to give you some background about my work, my interests, and how that has actually fed into, I think, in a very authentic way, my involvement in the development of the place-based education certificate at UVM. And I'll dive a little bit more into that with some of the definitions that I've already sort of introduced to you. So in order to sort of think about place-based education, I think we also really need to sort of look at what our own sense of place is. And I have a definition from Matt Sanger here, where place can be broadly defined as the relationship between a person and the land and the community where they live. One sense of place is developed through an experiential intimacy with natural processes, community, and history of that place. According to Matt Sanger, individuals acquire a sense of place through direct conversations with the elements of their place, sharing stories about the land and with their fellow inhabitants, and through education. So I thought if we could stop here for a minute and ask the audience to think about what their personal sense of place is. Is there a specific place that is significant or meaningful to you? And you get to define sort of what's significant and meaningful is. So the folks want to just drop maybe a couple of ideas about their own personal sense of place, or is there a specific place that is really significant and meaningful to you? Is that okay to do that and drop that in the chat?
Sure.
Okay. Use my teacher wait time. Yeah. Oftentimes, and I'm seeing that in the 2 examples that have just been posted, that oftentimes our sense of place and meaningful places hark back to our family and our childhood. Or if you're not, maybe some reminders of places, you know, the example of the Hudson Valley, which is also near and dear to my heart, having grown up along the Hudson River. Yeah. And it's interesting, which is probably not a surprise since most of you are from Cary, you're all talking about some pretty amazingly beautiful places on our planet. Adirondacks, Yosemite National Park, the Rockies. Soul Point, I know Soul Point as well. Yeah, walking, biking, canoeing. These are great. Lake Superior, yeah. And interestingly enough, I think I've been to pretty much all these places that all of you have listed here. And I have to agree that if I think about it, they all each have some significant and meaning to me. Yeah, White Mountains. Mohonk, yeah, I know that place. Wow. So I feel connected to you already in all the examples that you've put up here in the chat. It's pretty exciting. I wish that we were together in person so we could talk about these places a little bit more. But this is also to give you, yeah, North Atlantic. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. So these are the kinds of sort of activities or journal reflections we engage our students in. What you're seeing there is a picture of our students entering into a beautiful place on Lake Champlain called Rock Point. And the presenters would be my co-teachers, Walt Pullman and Amy Orenstein, standing on the other side, sort of introducing them to this place. But we leave that bridge and make our way down a pretty steep cliff on the right-hand side to the shores of Lake Champlain to talk about the geology, the pretty incredible, unique geology of that place right there on Rock Point, which juts right out into Lake Champlain. Some of you may be familiar with that place, actually, if you've been to Burlington or north of Burlington. So thank you for participating in that. It's my way of trying to get some audience participation in what can be maybe an impersonal kind of presentation. So going forward, I'm going to go a little bit deeper in terms of these different notions of place-based education, and also try and make the connection between this research, these ideas, these traditions, and how they play out in the new place-based education graduate certificate at UVM. And that picture on the left there is actually a picture of a classroom at Burlington High School, where the entire program is, it's called Burlington City and Lake, and students elect to be part of this semester-long high school program, all based on place-based education. And I will share that story with you in a little bit. So place-based education is learning that's rooted in what is local. It's all about the unique history, environment, culture, economy, literature, and art that is wrapped up in a particular place. And like I've already sort of shared, in the development of this program, we really look at a variety of different perspectives and lenses and looking at place, looking at the local community and its importance and how that really needs to be part of the learning context for students. I would say probably all learning experiences in our schools and our K-12 education. Looking at more critical traditions, which focus on socio-political analyses of place, and then also incorporating traditional ecological knowledge and relationships with the natural world, and looking at indigenous perspectives and indigenous perspectives contributions to place and place-based education. So Sobel is sort of one of the key people that we talk about as one of the founding principles of place and place-based education. And, you know, he's done some research that actually shows that place-based education increases academic achievement, helps students develop stronger ties with their communities, enhances students' appreciation for the natural world, and creates heightened commitment to serving as active and contributing citizens. Here you see some of our students from last semester involved in water quality monitoring as one of the field experiences of this class. More of the critical traditions really step back and look at sort of place from more of the inherent nature of conflict of place that are wrapped up in colonization, race, class, gender. And Greenwood, whose work is very much steeped in the critical tradition, suggests that to really know a place is to understand how environment, culture have shaped it, and to appreciate that any particular place might have diverse and competing meaning for different groups. And that really we need to focus on place conscious education so that that will challenge educators to rethink the assumptions of schooling in the context of the places that we inhabit and the places that we leave behind. And often indigenous modes of education offer differing perspectives of place based on their operative knowledge system, which carries the pre-existing ethics of social and ecological sustainability. Indigenous cultures maintain that humans have a responsibility for maintaining a harmonious relationship with the natural world. Western cultures often harbor an anthropocentric ethic that reinforces the perceived right to exercise dominion over nature to use for personal and economic gain. So I'll shift a little bit more, again, knowing that this is the backdrop and the underlying philosophy and traditions of how place and place-based education certificate program came to be at the University of Vermont, and how this anchors, these traditions anchors, and it's designed to also meet the growing interest in education, social justice, and the environment among students, in particular at UVM. The program is designed to prepare educators to teach in a variety of settings, using the interdisciplinary construct of place and the principles and practices to address local, social, cultural, and environmental issues. And the PBE certificate is a partnership between at least two different colleges, College of Education and the Rubenstein School for Environment. And within that, the Department of Education, myself and Simon Jorgensen, and other colleagues, and Shelburne Farms, which I mentioned before, which, if you're not familiar, is a working farm located on Lake Champlain, which focuses on education for sustainability for students, teachers, and community members. Amy Ornstein, who is also sort of one of the co-developers and co-instructors of this program, is currently working at Shelburne Farms. So our goals in the overall sort of certificate is for students to design and implement place-based curricula, for them to analyze specific places through all these different lenses that are mentioned there: socio-political, cultural, ecological, historical, for them to co-create new and engaging forms of experiential education, for them to learn to teach in a way that nurtures a sense of place while honoring individual identities, and always asking the students to step back and reflect on how power, privilege, and position influence and potentially bias people's approaches to education in the world. This certificate is a 12-credit certificate. It's an undergraduate certificate, 6 or more credits, or, sorry, having seen at the 100 level. And there are 2 required courses, one that I'm going to talk about in detail, the foundations course, which is essentially the first course that students take, introducing them to the traditions and the principles and practices of PBE. And then the capstone, obviously the last course that they take, which is very much involved in inviting students to apply what they've learned throughout the certificate in a project that they actually develop in collaboration with a community partner. This past semester, Simon Jorgensen, my colleague, taught this course for the first time. 13 students enrolled and all have completed, and I believe those 13 students are our first group of students that have completed the entire PBE certificate. I'll just let you glance at these courses. Students must choose at least 2 of these elective courses as part of the PBE certificate. They have a variety of different courses. In fact, this list, I think, has even increased since I created this slide. So in order to talk about place-based education at the University of Vermont, we need to understand that it's situated in Burlington, Vermont, which in and of itself, like most places, is a contact zone of contested place stories. This is an emphasis of what we try to get our students to think about in terms of what stories about the land are being told here in Burlington. And that's the university that sort of sits right up on the top of the hill there, overlooking the Adirondacks in one direction and the Green Mountains of what you see in the background there in the other. So what we're really trying to do is give us as faculty and students opportunities for healing and for reconciliation, and thinking about our relationship to ourselves, to one another, and relationship to the land. Again, in thinking about sort of contested place stories. So the course is, the PBE Foundations course is mixed modality. It meets it meets weekly for 3 hours, 7 on-campus meetings, and comprise workshops, guest speakers, in-person and remote, and 7 field-based meetings. These are some of the places that we visited to learn more about Burlington, the Burlington region, and sort of looking at ecology, looking at equity, and looking at questions of education. So Rock Point is a place that we visited, looking at the geology there, looking at more ecology focus as on a river canoe trip, a trip to Shelburne Farms, looking at farm to school and education for sustainability. We went to Potash Brook to do water quality monitoring. We went to Ethan Allen Homestead to look at the partnerships with Abenaki people and looking at indigenous cultural revival. We spent time at Burlington City and Lake. We went to their school. They came to campus to learn about this high school place-based education program. And there's also a place-based education elementary school called Champlain Elementary. So we spent time there. Just to give you more context, there were 20 students. Most of them were sophomores, juniors, and seniors, all white students, mix of primarily education and environmental science majors. Foundations of the course itself obviously reflect the foundations of the program. I won't read through all of them again. They're not identical, but they get more specific from what I said in terms of the program before. It's very much a reflective course. We have journal prompts very much related to the experience that they engaged in on the day, usually the trip that day, or what it is we had in terms of personal and professional speakers in our class that day, and 3 different major projects, which I'll talk about in a little bit now. So we really want students to dive into and get a sense of Burlington as a place. We want them to dig beneath the surface of things, to map it, and to tell stories about the qualities that make Burlington unique and distinctive in ways that resonate for those students themselves. So we do this mapping and storytelling project to kick off the semester. It's a very creative project. They can do a variety of different things, and we encourage them to do everything from hand-drawn sketches to digital maps to ArcGIS story maps, and a range of options for telling their story and thinking about ways to integrate, for example, their week in Burlington or Burlington A to Z, and the audiences for them to share it with the rest of the class. The second big assignment that builds on this is engaging students in the creation of a toolkit, which is a curated collection of resources that reflect their experiences, discussions, and readings. The purpose for this is for them to identify elements that are most meaningful to them and useful as they construct their own understanding of place and place-based education. We ask them to choose 8 to 10 pieces and talk about what is this piece and why is it significant to my thinking about place-based education at this point in time. And then a very large culminating place-based design project, providing students the opportunity to apply what they've learned to actually developing the design of a place-based learning experience for others. And here we take a project-based approach and really getting students to think about designing a project proposal that they submit for review from the faculty, doing a project presentation a couple of weeks later after they've received feedback to get more feedback from their peers in the class, and final project design and presentation at the end of the semester. Again, I'll just sort of quickly illustrate sort of what the project guidelines are here, but the main thrust is for them to design a project, the PBE project, around a specific site that incorporates what we call POP, pre-visit, on-site, and post experiences, and clearly demonstrates a sense of place and multiple stories of that place, using the principles, using the experiences, and integrating course themes and concepts throughout. And I'll wrap this up with showing you a couple of photos from this past year's experience with my esteemed colleagues. We have the luxury of co-teaching this class. There are 3 instructors, which is usually unheard of at the university level these days. But this is an important program to both colleges and to the university on the whole. And within the year, we have 60 students enrolled in the certificate, and more keep coming every day. So it's a very popular new certificate. And we're already thinking about how this might become a minor and perhaps even a full-blown program at the university. But here we are in our first year. That's Walt showing a canoe that was actually built by some students in a natural resource class a couple of years ago at Shelburne Farms. And that's Amy and Walt presenting to the students in the campus center there. Amy standing on the fountain, Walt to the left, and then Amy out at, I think out at Shelburne Farms again, and presenting to students. Peer teaching is very much a part of this program, and it's interesting how this manifests itself in a variety of different ways. This is one of the students in the class who's actually leading some of the investigations that are part of the water quality monitoring project on Potash Brook. She's actually an intern who has done this before, and actually there were a number of students in the class. So we invited them to actually be presenters and to lead groups of students through different investigations along the brook that day. And here we have elementary students teaching our college students basket weaving as part of our visit to Champlain Elementary School. Shelburne Farms is a very close partner in a lot of different ways. And here you see students harvesting vegetables, preparing the meal, and the outcome of our harvest and preparation there in the center in terms of the wonderful food. Food's a big theme in this program, in this class. Food makes its way into our classes every single week in one form or another. Art and dance is very much part of this. In the center is, we gave students clay in the class and asked them to sort of describe, create their developing conceptions of place and place-based education. And what you're seeing again on the left and right are photos of our experiences with the students at the elementary school and our students engaged in African dance that's being led by the elementary school students on that day. School and community partnerships are really important. I've talked about Burlington City and Lake, which is a place-based education semester-long program as part of Burlington High School. Here's our experience of visiting with them and at their school on campus, and then again back at their school on the right. Reciprocity and gratitude are a big part of one of the many themes that really focus this program and the work that we do with our students. Every trip that we go on, there is some kind of gift and some note of gratitude that's expressed, usually by some students in the class. And that's exactly what you're seeing here on the right-hand side, is two students presenting gifts to instructors and students. And at the end of the semester, on the last day of class, Amy, Walt, and I were pleasantly surprised by a final piece of gratitude that that groups of students wrote for each of us. And those were pamphlets with personal notes to each of us that, quite frankly, really blew us away in terms of what they took away from our course in terms of what reciprocity and gratitude means in reference to their instructors of this course. So that's something that I will treasure for a long time. And the grand finale for this class in December was a trip to the bell tower, which is off limits to most students and faculty. I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't know that we could gain access. But Walt has connections and got the key. So we got to travel up to the bell tower, which overlooks the entire campus. And if you can imagine the Adirondacks on the left and the Green Mountains on the right. If it was a clear day, we would have seen that, but we didn't. But it was a really fun place to hold our final class activity on the last day of class for the semester. I'm going to conclude by leaving us with some words from Wendell Berry on the nature of place. I think this is a nice place to sort of stop and maybe for all of us to sort of reflect on some of the things I shared but again, on your own experiences of place and place-based education and the power of it. But I'll read this from Wendell Berry right now. What is the nature? What is the genius of this place? What if we weren't here? Would nature be doing here? What will the nature of the place permit us to do here without exhausting either the place itself or the birthright of those who will come later? What even might nature help us to do here? Under what conditions imposed by the genius of the place and the genius of our arts might our work here be healthful and beautiful? So I will leave you with those words from Wendell, and I am happy to stop sharing and discuss.
So I think people have the option to enter questions in the Q&A, and I'm looking at that now, or I think you can unmute yourselves. Not sure. Matt, can they unmute themselves? And
If they can, Alan, I can unmute them.
so Ava has a question that went into the chat. Can you unmute her? There she is.
Ava, I'm wondering if you could, if you want to sort of talk about that a little bit more and your experience in incorporating global citizenship into your own PBE teaching practices.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have been doing a lot with place-based education, and I think in really the last 2 years have looked at ways to add global citizenship in with a more local place-based curriculum, and have found that sort of drawing students out in this more global setting has allowed them to kind of return or reconnect with our local place in maybe a different way than if we hadn't done that. So I was just wondering if you have any experience sort of connecting this more place-based approach with global citizenship in your programs or expertise, or if you know of folks that are kind of bridging those two pieces.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by global citizenship, and also some examples of how you've implemented that into your teaching?
Yeah, mostly I've done some work in Peru with a group of indigenous people. So we had, before the pandemic, been running annual trips there with students and teachers. And then of course, when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do that anymore. So I wrote a series of 3 case studies for students that sort of toggled back and forth between learning about this indigenous group and sort of about indigenous knowledge in the Amazon, but then asking students to really create that knowledge in their own place and go find, sort of parallel information from what was in the case study. And through that, then, really seeing them develop some identities with like stewardship and global citizenship. So having sort of the motivation of how what they're doing locally connects to what other groups around the world are doing. So for me, it's mostly been through these case studies, which has been part of some graduate work that I'm doing right now. So I guess that's kind of the example that I've been using lately.
Yeah, I'm not sure this directly addresses global citizenship, but I think it approaches it. We partner with teachers and faculty from Kamehameha schools in Hawaii. And that's too long a story to get into right now on how that partnership came to be. But so in looking sort of more globally and reaching out of sort of local places, we bring these faculty, and our original plan was to sort of bring them into Zoom, but they were so intrigued about our work with this place-based education program that 2 of them actually came to our course. in the fall and participated fully in the class. And actually, we handed basically the class over to them and thinking about the work that they're doing with Native Hawaiian and Native Hawaiian cultures and place-based education. They are actually partners in other initiatives that we are part of at the University of Vermont. So it wasn't, they just didn't just drop in. It was planned. And we will continue to have that partnership with them, and they will be part of this course and other initiatives and programs that we're doing right now. So, we're really looking, yes, we really are looking to sort of help students develop more of a global citizenship perspective. And we're trying to do that obviously through sort of local lenses. But we are also really thinking about how to branch out a little bit more. And I think our Hawaii partners have helped us in doing that. And then we also have a fair bit of our work and even our visits at the Ethan Allen Homestead in particular, and looking at Abenaki culture. And we also have some folks who come and work with us, mostly through guest presentations in the class, in helping us to examine sort of Abenaki perspectives on place and place-based education, and also looking at Burlington as a contested place in terms of some of the horrific things that have gone on, even at the University of Vermont, related to eugenics and indigenous peoples and cultures. Is that helpful, Ava?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
So Ashley, you had a question. You wanna answer it? Ask it live.
Yes. Hi. Regina, thank you so much for your talk. Really enjoyed it. I am just curious, are there other organizations or institutions offering similar certificate about place-based education, and whether, there's any also that might be offered at graduate level or even outside of academia? I feel like this is a topic that is so important and that a lot of educators would jump on if it were close to them and accessible to them. And I guess, are there plans to expand to other colleges and universities?
Good question, Ashley. I don't necessarily know the answer to that. I would like to say yes, but I don't think the answer is that there are very many. And so what we are doing at the University of Vermont is we've also expanded to graduate level in developing what's called an Education for Sustainability graduate certificate. And that is a true partnership between Shelburne Farms and the University of Vermont School of Education and the Rubenstein School. Simon and Walt are very much involved with that. I'm more peripherally involved with that right now. But if you were just to do a quick search on that Education for Sustainability certificate, University of Vermont, I think you probably come to a website and pretty quickly. If not, I can certainly send you that information. So I'm guessing from your experience, you might actually be more interested in sort of a graduate level kind of program related to this. But I don't know, but I should probably find out what other universities and colleges are offering similar kinds of programs. And even in our meeting the other day, because we're already planning for next semester with this course, there were 4 or 5 of us on this meeting. The more we talk, the more we realize that 12 credits is not enough. And because we had so many ideas for other courses of things that we wanted to do and give students more practical experiences and actually engaging in the development and doing place-based education, we can't possibly do that in just 2 courses. So we're already thinking of expanding this to a minor and, maybe even something bigger programmatically in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Other questions for Regina? I guess I'll ask a question about, do you think that so just reflecting on the places that you heard about in the chat, they were a mix of people's where they live, which is written into your definition of place, sense of place. But then a bunch of them were places where we don't live,
Right.
that are far away. And I wonder whether with your kind of local, where we live, place-based program, kind of, are those kind of totally independent? Or I guess, are there transferable kind of skills or dispositions that once you learn how to connect to your local place, make you more inclined to be connected to other places? So what do you think about that kind of transferability?
I actually think it's a really interesting research question, Alan. I do. From my own personal standpoint, I would say yes. I think, when you're connected to this place, I mean, right now I'm looking out on the Green Mountain National Forest. My property abuts it. And I have so many different connections to this place called the Green Mountains now that I didn't have as somebody coming from New York. And it has sort of expanded my understanding, my knowledge, and my relationship to this place that I otherwise would not have had. And I think we begin to really see that happening in our students. Certainly that is something that I've noticed in this course with these 20 students who are pretty motivated to begin with. They know what this course is about and they've signed up because they want more. They're hungry for more. And I can also say yes from the standpoint of those 3 different projects that we engage them in terms of their development, as they reflect on, think about place, but then also try to take their knowledge and their understanding, their new knowledge and understanding from these variety of different perspectives. We're not just talking about sort of engagement with place from appreciation, but also taking a step back and having more of a critical perspective of place in terms of socio-political analyses. So it's more complicated. It's a much deeper understanding of place from the past, the present, and the future. And also sort of trying to think forward in terms of planet and the state of the planet, and the planet that I'm guessing everybody on this call wants to preserve for a long time to come. So, but I think you pose a really, really interesting research question that is something we could probably even explore through our courses, in examining that more closely with our students. But I say yes. I think the answer is yes.
So I think we have time for one more question. One came in from Simon Gruber. Simon, Matt, can you liberate him and have him? Simon, if you can ask your question, that'd be great. Matt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Simon. I've given him permission, so I'm just waiting for him to unmute.
Okay, I wonder if he's. Oh, now we have another. Oh, I don't have a microphone available. Okay, so I'm going to read his question.
Okay.
Can you comment on the impact on older cultures when the whole population is forced to leave the landscape where they lived for many generations, as happened with indigenous people in parts of the US? How does it affect their connections to each other and to the environment?
I'll try and unpack that, Simon, if I can, in trying to understand your question and maybe even give you some examples from the course. So if you recall, one of the themes of the course is reciprocity and healing. And well, from the healing standpoint, I guess that, the University of Vermont, like most places, is a contested place. Abenaki Native populations live there and were forced to leave that area a couple of generations ago. But the impact of that still exists in the people of, Abenaki heritage who still live there. And present generations are still suffering from even some of the eugenics research that was done at the University of Vermont, particularly on Native American Abenaki cultures. And we have people who come in and talk to us about this. And so in terms of how this affects the connections to each other and to the environment, I think part of it is, again, looking at the connections, even as devastating as they are, from the past to the present, recognizing that, and also sort of thinking about ways for reconciliation. And I think we're still in a major process of reconciliation in this country, in particular, if we just take only Native American populations. There are lots of different examples in terms of reconciliation of what's happening, and for me personally, what needs to happen. But that's a big part of what we try to sort of engage our students in these conversations. And I don't necessarily have the answer, but I think it starts with the recognition that the example you give, populations who are forced to leave places, and the impact of that, reflecting on that and thinking about that is an important part of what we do, even in our journal reflections in class and discussions in class. So, and sort of what we do moving forward in reconciling this with certain populations. Again, not sure if I'm totally answering that. And I'm not sure that anybody really has a true answer to how this affects others. But I think part of it is this awareness, this reflection on it. It's also looking at the complexity of places that, yes, we can't just sort of go and enjoy and appreciate. We also have to sort of step back and think about from the past, who lived in these places before, and you know, what do we have to think about and do in terms of people who were forcibly removed from land and places in the past.
Well, this is, I think we could, and I hope that we do continue this conversation at the sessions that we have this afternoon. Just to remind folks, there are 2 open meetings, one at 1 and one on 1:30. If you're interested in participating in one of those, please let me and Matt know, and we'll get you the link. But at this point, I want to wrap up our formal session. We've gone a little over time, but Regina, this has been really a wonderful seminar, a wonderful topic and great insights and wisdom that you've shared with us. So I think everyone can join me in thanking Regina for a great talk, and I'll look forward to talking with you in one of the breakout rooms.
And thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share some of my collective work. You know, this is part of a lot of people and a lot of work over a sustained period of time. So thank you. I appreciated being here.
You bet.